guys, I'm so excited for you to meet today's guest. You're at the Mastering Social Media for Schools podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Gribble. I really specialize in K-12 social media storytelling. It's what I live for. I cheer you guys on. I learn so much from you. And sometimes I get to hear great stories like today's, where Shain, just a little over 2 years into this school PR journey, um, he has a really great story and how Kansas City Public Schools been through a lot in their history, but recently passed their first bond in over 58 years. It was for 474 million, and he is going to break down some of the strategies that he used to pass that bond. So definitely if you got one in the future, you're going to want to listen in. He also just talks about building relationships and how he really worked in a big school district, 15,000 students, 33 schools, how they really approached social media and got that buy-in from folks, and then what the impact has been. I mean, they have astronomical growth in their social media audience. He's got some great advice, you guys. I can't wait for you to listen. And one of the pieces of advice, just before we get to this week's K-12 PR tip, is come to Stillwater, Minnesota in June of 2026. We have our second annual Social Media for Schools retreat. It is 3 days dedicated to social media. We're talking AI, we're talking students as storytellers, we're talking taking action, not just learning, but we are taking action while you're at the retreat so you don't come home and you just got a whole bunch of stuff to do. It's happening June 23rd through the 25th in Stillwater, Minnesota. We still have a few spots open, but it's closing quickly because we limit it to only 125 people, you guys. So, if you want to get signed up now. You can check out more over at socialschoolforedu.com. I'll have a direct link in the show notes, okay? But we want to see you there at the Social Media for Schools retreat. All right, let's get to this week's K-12 PR tip. All right, today's K-12 PR tip. You guys, you are the head cheerleaders. You are excited about social media. And guess what? Not everybody is. And I'm going to tell you that's okay. Your focus is to grab onto the hands of the people that have embraced social media storytelling, those that want to help you out and share. Shane's actually going to break down kind of three types of folks that you're going to deal with in your schools. And you don't need everybody, okay? Maybe you'll win some of those people over eventually, but some people, they don't understand why social media and taking pictures or short videos would be part of their job, okay? You just need to grab on to the folks that are excited, that are interested in helping you. So whether they're inviting you to their classroom, or they are taking pictures or videos themselves and getting them to you, however you can cheer those people on, no matter what kind of title they have. They might be a para, they might be a community volunteer, they might be a teacher, they might be a media specialist. Grab onto those folks who want to embrace and tell the story and celebrate the great things happening. Don't stress about having to build relationships with everybody all at once, because it's impossible. Okay. So that is my K-12 PR tip for today. We're getting well into the school year. Sometimes it might be a little frustrating. Let's lean on those folks that are willing to help us. All right. Now I'm so excited for you to meet Shain Bergan. Let's get started. Good morning, Shain. Is it Bergan?
Yes, that's right. Shain Bergan.
Bergan. I forgot to ask for sure. Shain is on the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you just briefly share your background and then your role as the public relations coordinator for Kansas City Public Schools?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I'm the public relations coordinator for Kansas City Public Schools. So, I deal with all of our internal and external communications. I run our social media. I run our relationships with the local news agencies, all that good stuff. Before this, I've actually only been in school communications for a couple of years. Before that, I was I was a journalist for 15 years in TV news and in newspapers. And you probably a lot of people listening to this know how difficult that job can be. And so when I switched over to school communications, it's just been a huge blessing and a wonderful ride, and I'm excited for what the future brings.
Yeah, you get to focus on all that positivity, instead of maybe all the things that make the headlines for the news. I know
Right.
many of the listeners have taken your path. So when did you start with Kansas City Public Schools? What year?
That was April of 2023.
Okay, so you skipped the COVID nonsense, which is good, and got to jump in. Tell me a little bit about Kansas City Public Schools. How many students do you serve? How many buildings, schools, that kind of thing.
We have about 15,000 students spread out among 33 schools, 38 school buildings. We were actually much larger, about twice as large, probably about 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago. Kansas City has a really interesting history with its school system where we were really a growing, thriving school district. And, there's a lot of societal and community factors that, happen in the middle to late part of the 20th century. There was a lot of white flight. Public charter schools, free public charter schools ended up popping up in the Kansas City area. And so that really started dropping our enrollment quite a bit. We lost quite a few students. We lost um, quite a few school buildings. We're still repurposing a lot of our older buildings and figuring
Okay.
out what to do with them. And we went unaccredited for 20 years and then just got reaccredited a handful of years ago. And since then, it's been all upward. State test scores up, enrollment up, the bond being passed. It's a brand new kind of era for Kansas City Public Schools. We're doing great things. The kids are doing great things. And so communication is so important to spread the word on that because everything we do is a little bit of marketing, right? We're trying to tell people here's why you'll want to be a part of Kansas City Public Schools because in Kansas City, people have a choice. They can go to public charters instead.
Yeah. Um, so how long have or how did we first connect? Because so you've only been in this job for since 2023. So how did we first connect?
So in the summer of 2023, I went to the NSPRA conference in St. Louis.
Okay.
Um, as a new school PR guy, I had only been in school PR for a few months at that point, and I was just trying to soak in anything I could. I hit up as many sessions as I could across a lot of different areas because in my job I have to wear a lot of hats, like a lot of people in school PR. And I came across one of your sessions, and it was just uh, I I loved your ability to give tangible advice while also speaking to the larger scope and the why and why we do things. And it was just a very inspirational thing. And that's how we first connected. And then I saw that you were doing your own social media in schools conference. And I said, I've got to be a part of that. That sounds so cool. And that was so much fun. I still tell people all about that conference.
Yeah, that was great to be able to meet you in person and then share the story that you're about to share. But before we get to that, one question in your communications department, you got 15,000 students. So, Shane, is it just you, or do you have other people in your communications office?
I'm very fortunate to have a great team around me. My boss, Nicole Collier-White, is the Chief Communications Officer, so she's part of the superintendent's cabinet.
Okay.
Communications for Kansas City Public Schools is part of a larger department, communications and community engagement. And
Okay.
so have a lot of great people on the community engagement side. They're running like our parent groups and our parent outreach, direct communications for them, things like that. So for the communication side, what most people would think of school communications, right now it's just two people. Right now it's me as the PR coordinator and it is our videographer, the
Okay.
amazing Posse KB, and then we do have a communications director position currently vacant, probably going to be filled in the next few weeks here.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's just good to have some scope there of what your team looks like. And then what does social media look like for you? We'll make sure to link up all your social media channels so people can take a look at what you're sharing.
We want people to come to the Kansas City Public Schools Facebook page or Instagram or X or our individual schools platforms and be able to tell just from scrolling through what we're all about. We're all about highlighting three different things, which is student and staff accolades, slice of life moments, and important informational things, right? So if we have a healthy mixture of those things, we think that's what we think we're doing our job then. So when I first came to Kansas City Public Schools in April of 23, um, gosh, there probably hadn't been a Facebook post in a couple of months. There probably, it was, which isn't unusual for a lot of school districts, right? Who haven't really embraced that part of the game. But I remember I came in and I'm thinking like, we have we're living in an age where we have the ability to be in people's pockets all day
Hmm.
long. People are already on their phones scrolling every day. We have free real estate to be able to be there in front of their eyes and to show them what we're really about, especially for a school district that is coming out of a complicated place and wanting to show people that it's a brand new era. We really needed to tap into that. So I remember like the hardest part of, well, I wanted to be in basically everywhere where there are eyes, right? So our social media platforms, YouTube, everything. And I didn't want to just vomit out a bunch of content. I wanted to have like a purpose behind it. And so I remember meeting with all our different principals, vice principals, teachers around the district, people in the central office who've been around a long time, really getting the sense of who we are and what we want to be going forward. And the hardest part was establishing those pipelines of content and those relationships with the individual schools and letting them know, like, hey, you don't have to be ultra defensive anymore. You don't have to feel like you're having to protect your area and you have a bunch of arrows coming in from the outside and a bunch of directives coming in from the outside. I'm here to help you. You're already doing great things. Just let me in, help me tell that story. You get a few people on board, it creates a snowball effect. You get
Hmm.
some more people on board, and then before you know it, everybody's wanting you to come out and shoot this, or we have this great story with this student who's doing this great thing. And but the hardest part was getting that going. But yeah, that's the thought process behind our social media, telling those great stories, fitting within those three categories, and making it to where when people go on, they can see who we are and what we're doing.
Yeah. Somebody said it in another episode. It lets you show the personality of your school.
Yes.
Shane, I just want to just reiterate the importance of building those relationships. So you just talked, I mean, you really haven't been there that long, just over 2 years. And so for the fact of you building those relationships already, sometimes that takes 2, 3, 4 years. So you really focused in on those principals, those assistant principals, developing those relationships, and then people started seeing some of the positive stories you were sharing. And then they said, hey, we want you to come cover our school. So, one question when you've got 33 schools, how do you balance some of your time or, what does your process, I guess, look like as far as if people are requesting you to come to the school? What does that process look like?
And in the beginning, it was, um, kind of a good problem to have you could see coming down the pike where you're establishing these relationships. People were saying like, I don't remember the last time we had a communications person at the school here trying to get this stuff. And it made me happy, but it made my heart sad a little bit too. And so as that snowball is rolling and you're getting more and more emails and phone calls and texts from principals, vice principals, teachers, and I always tell people call, text, email. I'm here for you. That's my job. But it can get overwhelming after a little bit. And so my team of super smart people help the communication side create a public request for or sorry, a communications request form. And so it's attached to the bottom of my email. It's available on the staff portion of our website to where people can get on there and they can say, hey, can I get some coverage of this event that's happening at 10 a.m. at East High School on October 10th? And then boom, and that goes to me and our videographer, and then we get together and we're kind of assigning it to each other or to whoever it might make the most sense for, and then letting the person know where we are with that process. So, creating that system has helped because you can have a whole bunch of content rolling in, but if you don't have a way to organize it in a professional way that makes sense, then you're kind of leaving a lot up to chance, and you're kind of working off of just the blackboard of your mind, which we have a lot of smart people in school PR, but we can create systems that help us out with that, so we're not always working in the blackboard of our mind. Yeah, and then from there, I mean, it's just keeping up with your calendar and making sure that you're properly representing your different schools. You're looking around every now and then and you're saying, well, I haven't heard from this school in a while. I need to reach out to this principal. I go to a lot of all principal meetings. We have these amazing positions in our schools called community liaisons, which are members of the community who are in the schools who are doing maybe work that falls through the cracks and doing things related to communications with the public. I'll lean on them a lot for what's going on in their schools and to help organize some of that. So if you can kind of mobilize the people around you who are already passionate about storytelling, you can
Mhm.
make that process easier for you. And it won't be hard, I think, once you start looking. It doesn't have to be a person in a particular position. I was just talking yesterday with an English teacher in one of our schools who was like, "Hey, we got a lot of cool stuff going on over here. Who do I talk to do I need to get this to our liaison person? Do I need to?" And I was telling him, hey, there's no need for the red tape. Like we can use you for this if you'd like. And so
Right.
that person I think is wanting to start their own X about what's going on in their classroom. And it's like I love that each person in the district can be a storyteller. You don't have to always think that that's just a communications person job or a PR person job. We can all be storytellers for our schools.
Yeah. And along those lines, is everything that you post like on a district page, is that all collected by you, or are you sometimes getting submissions and stories or photos, short videos from the schools themselves and are able to share some of that?
Most of it is from me, but I do like a good portion to come from the schools.
Okay.
So I'll use Hootsuite, and so um, we set goals at the beginning of each school year with our community liaisons and our principals and vice principals, our school site social media managers. um, we have trainings with them, and I created a social media best practices and content strategy guide for them to be able to understand and kind of wrap their minds around what we should be doing at the school level with these platforms. And so once you get that rolling, then I can get on Hootsuite and I can look around and I can see, oh, look at this cool thing happening at Wheatley Elementary. Look at this cool thing happening at Southeast High School. And I can either repurpose some of that just onto the district platforms, or I can reach out to our school site social media managers at those sites and say, "Hey, I saw you pop something up on this. I'd like to do something deeper on this. Can we get something going there?"
Yeah, I love it. Those are great tips. Okay, so I'd like to dive into this big time success story regarding your bond question. So, can you kind of share some of the background and then just the story behind leading to some success behind that question?
Absolutely. So, before earlier this year, the last time Kansas City had passed a school bond was 1967. That's the same era of the I Have a Dream speech from Martin Luther King. That was before we put a man on the moon. The Kansas City Royals here in Kansas City did not exist yet the last time that we had passed a school bond. In Missouri and probably a lot of other states, the average is every 2 or 3 years, communities are passing a bond for their schools. It's just kind of a part of being in a community and saying, yeah, every couple of years we might need some repairs to these schools, or we might need a new elementary school, or, there might be some sort of initiative we want to help along with the schools. But Kansas City had not done so in 58 years. And so what happens over that course of time, you have all these buildings. The average age of our buildings was about 60 years old. We have a lot of buildings that are over 100 years old. And so you have this situation where if you have no bond money coming in, which is the main way that school districts in Missouri kind of keep up with a lot of different facilities needs, you're having to pull that facilities money from money that could be better spent helping your students and staff in the classroom and in their schools, which is really a shame. And another thing happens too, which is you're never able to fully address those facilities needs then. So you could see over the course of almost 6 decades there, a lot of different facilities needs popping up where we had $650 million in deferred maintenance. Um, and people say, well, how did it get this bad? Well, it gets that bad when you have 60 years where you're just able to do little patches and fixes. We had, before we just started construction on a new school, we had not had new construction in Kansas City Public Schools for 30 years. So, we have people here who are uh, eligible to retire with full pension benefits who have never seen construction happen at Kansas City
Yeah.
Public Schools, which is wild. So, you're going through the decades, no bond money. You have desegregation issues that are happening in the 80s and 90s, of which Kansas City was a huge part of that federally. Um, and then free public charters popping up, which are bringing a lot of your students away from you and toward them. And you could see how that's kind of a perfect storm of challenges. um, but when that happens, you can't really go to your public when you're unaccredited and hemorrhaging students and underperforming and say, give us $474 million dollars. That's just not going to work with the public. And so our superintendent here, Dr. Collier, I know when she got into the position a handful of years ago, she was like, we're going to have to start being serious about making investments into the people, into the staffers, into the people who are going to give our kids a quality education. And I know we spent a lot of time and financial effort into making that happen. And then we started seeing the fruits, right? So we became accredited for the first time in 20 years. Our state APR scores have risen now several years in a row. Our enrollment turned around for the first time since 1993. We now are increasing enrollment while some of the charters are decreasing in enrollment. That hasn't happened since 1993. We have students who are making prosthetic limbs for the National World War One Museum here in Kansas City. We have students who are creating apps that can dim classroom lights based on how much natural light is coming in. We have brilliant people doing great things in Kansas City public schools. So we knew we had to leverage those great things happening in our schools to let people know this is not the KCPS of 10, 20, 30 years ago. This is a new era of KCPS. The kids are doing their part, the students and staff are doing their part. You know, can we ask that they do so in buildings where the pillars aren't falling down, where they've had to evacuate part of the back parking lot because a giant chunk is about to fall off the back of the building? Uh, it's funny because uh, you're making this case for Kansas City public schools being on the upward trajectory, which it absolutely is, as a reason to vote yes or as a reason to embrace the bond. But at the same time, it does feel a little gross because um, if a kid is not performing well in science or math or English, does he or she deserve any less to be in a classroom where the wall isn't falling apart? Does he
Mhm.
or she deserve any less to come to a school where they can feel proud that this is a district that is doing the best for me, where I'm not walking into a 100-year-old building where we're not sure if the heat is going to be working to its full capacity this winter? We just got air conditioning in all our school buildings last summer. Um, that should not happen.
Mhm.
It's 2025. Our kids deserve better. But we were very cognizant that still it's going to be a tough sell for that $474 million if we're not showing that this is a new KCPS, if we're not showing that we're on the upswing. So you're marrying kind of the logic and emotion into that. The logic of, hey, it's been 58 years. Here's the thing the kids are doing, but also the emotion of bringing people into our schools and saying, "Hey, l- let us show you what our kids are having to deal with." We brought in stakeholders, we brought in leaders of local organizations, we brought in the news media. Anytime a media person wanted to see the inside of a school, I basically said yes. And I met him and I dropped whatever I was doing and I brought him in. I remember the bond consultants who they do this for a living telling me strongly suggest against that. Don't do that. Don't bring them into the schools because then it makes you look like you're bad stewards of the money. Um, but I think my boss had said, bad stewards of what? We haven't had a bond in 58 years. What do we have to lose? We really felt like we know our people and we know our community, and we felt like we had to show, not tell. We had to bring them in and show them what the inside of our schools are like to say, hey, you've seen the academic strides we've been making the last couple of years, and the students are doing it in these buildings. Imagine what they could do if they had buildings that actually facilitated their education instead of buildings that are can be somewhat a hindrance to them. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, I love that showing, not telling. And sometimes it is hard because when it comes to a bond, you can't say vote yes, but
Right, right.
you can give them the facts. So
Yes.
it sounds like you had a really multifaceted approach. I mean, obviously social media was part of it. You worked with the media, you had in-person meetings. How long was that process leading up to voting day? Did that start a year beforehand, 2 years beforehand? What did that look like?
I would say the PR and marketing aspect of it started a little over a year beforehand,
Okay.
where we were delving into, okay, what do we want this to look like, right? As you mentioned, you can't tell people outright vote yes, but you can give information. And so we felt very early on that the information was on our side, that the information spoke for itself. The 58 years without a bond, the growing achievements and accolades in Kansas City public schools, the look and feel of our buildings, we felt like those things could really speak for themselves. And so, yeah, we started a little over a year. I remember even in uh, was it Seattle at Inspire at Seattle? I remember we doing bond meetings virtually during Inspire in Seattle, and and taking some bond workshops while I was there as well. I know that like in Missouri, typically a bond campaign is like 60 to 90 days. Uh, but we identified very early on that a few flyers and public meetings weren't going to do it. This was going to have to be a comprehensive effort to completely reframe how a lot of the public views our school system, because a lot of people don't have kids in the school system, right? Or they remember the KCPS of yesteryear. And so to permeate that bubble is a really difficult thing to do. We knew we had to work very early on to set up a comprehensive strategy. It ended up being the most comprehensive bond effort in state history.
Yeah. And what were the results?
85% of Kansas City voters voted yes, which was overwhelming. So already we knew it was going to be a tough climb because um, here in Missouri, it's not a simple majority passes a school bond. It's 4/7 of voters. And so we had to have 57.14 something something. So we knew 57.2 would get us there. So that was like the number we were always focused on is, 57 for 57, 57% for 57 years. And uh, so I remember on election night, we had, just a watch party with some of the public and some of the amazing people been helping with the effort. And one of the greatest moments of my life, behind, of course, the birth of my children and my wedding and whatnot, was sitting in that room with our superintendent and our board chair and seeing those results roll in and that first batch comes in and it's overwhelming. It's like 70 something percent yes. And then the second batch comes in and it widens. Now it's 80%. And we're looking at it and before we know it, it's over 30% in or whatever it was. And we're at like 82%. And I remember us all kind of looking at each other and our consultant who had done many of these things, she goes, uh, I think you can go out and tell the people it passed now. Uh, and we're all just looking at each other dumbfounded, not because we didn't believe in Kansas City voters and what we were doing, but just because the result was so overwhelming. We loved that Kansas City voters said loud and clear, um, we want a great future for our kids,
Hmm.
right? Something we always say, everybody says in society is we want a great future for our children.
Yeah.
That's something everybody says across all spectrums. Um, but when it comes to brass tacks, what are the actions being done that back up that sentiment for Kansas City voters to come out at 85% saying, we care about the future of our children and we believe in you to be able to deliver and we believe in the message and Kansas City Public Schools, our Kansas City Public Schools staff and the children and families of Kansas City. Such an overwhelming, inspirational moment.
Yeah. That is amazing. I think anybody listening is like, holy cow, you certainly did things right. Well, we're going to link up all the social media stuff. Do you guys still have a page that references some of the bond work that you did on your website or not?
Yes. Yeah. So kcpublicschools.org/bond. Um, I think kcpsbond.org also takes you there. We still have up a bunch of our bond materials and how it impacts our schools and our different touch points and everything. Because now's the fun part, right? Now's where we say, okay, you believed in the message. Now we get to prove it to you and bring you along in the process. It's the fun part. We broke ground earlier this year now, just after we passed the bond. We broke ground on a new empowerment center, which is going to be a new elementary school, a family resource center, and a pre-K center. Much needed for that neighborhood. And it also brings one of our really aging schools back to its original neighborhood.
Mhm.
So most people in this neighborhood, they had Martin Luther King Elementary there. Uh, a different building pops up quite a while ago. Uh, they had to start busing their kids away from this neighborhood to go to this other school. Now, because of the bond, we're able to build their school back in their own neighborhood, so they're not having to send their kids elsewhere. Is a really great thing. And so, um, as we build these new schools, and that's our first school construction in 30 years, as we build these new schools, as we make these much needed improvements, and we're not talking about superfluous things, we're talking about things that are needed for our children's education. We're going to be bringing the public along every step of the way. We've put out the phases for each part of construction. So we have three phases and we've put out in the public sphere. Um, Here are the different schools that are going to be in each phase. Here's the money that's going to go toward each school. Here's the work that's going to happen at those schools. But it's also an ongoing discussion. If we get in discussion with some of those families at some of those schools and they say, even more so with this, it might be good if we had this at the school. That's something that's open to that's something that's subject to change. So we're looking forward to bringing the public and our families along on this journey uh, to see firsthand what the promise becomes in reality. But that's the fun part. We're really excited about it.
Yeah, the communication doesn't stop after the yes comes in. It
Yes.
in some cases just starts, and so that's great advice. So the district overall, just turning the page just back to social media, you've
Hmm.
actually had triple digit growth for the last three
Yes.
years on your social
Yes.
media channels. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah. I, it's amazing what happens when like you don't have a social media uh presence and then you're going 100 miles an hour, which is really what we started to do. Uh, I think it overwhelmed some people in a good way, but there's also that snowball effect of what we were talking about earlier, where once you start telling those great stories, people want more,
Mhm.
right? Oh, that's really cool. What else you got going on? Or the schools will say, "Hey, we have something similar really cool happening. Can you highlight some of this?" So some of those great stories I was telling you about some of the things that our students and staff are doing, and one of our high schools won the state title for soccer, so we made like a big deal about going out and using our drone and getting some great practice stuff. But just being creative with the storytelling, creating something different that when somebody's scrolling through their social media, they see something that catches their eye, right?
Mhm.
Because um, reach kind of only goes so far. You want engagement too, right?
Mhm.
So anybody can kind of scroll past your stuff, but are they stopping? I think we have an engagement rate right now of like 14% or something, which is really good. That means that somebody's scrolling, almost one in five people are actually stopping at your thing and clicking on it and doing something with it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think trusting your people on the ground who know the schools, right? Don't think you have to do it all. Um, you may have to do a lot of running around, especially at first. but also setting up those people at the schools who are already passionate about those schools and those students and the staff and what they're doing,
Hmm.
and using those people to help tell the story and then building on it, just always trying to get better. You know, when we started really our social media blitz back in 2023, it was little more than me running around to schools taking pictures of cute little kids, you
Hmm.
know? And now, when we talk about campaigns and making cool videos and making graphics in a creative way, um, never kind of lose sight of growth, but also understanding that there's a charm to the avant-garde, right? Not everything needs to be polished. Never think that something isn't worth it, right? I know there's a lot of folks who say, teachers especially, they're hard on themselves. They're like, "Oh yeah, we did this. We were doing this lesson. We're da da da." And I'm like, "That sounds really cool. Why didn't you call me up?" And they're like, "Ah, I didn't. It's not a big deal." It's like, like that's where you're wrong. Like that could have been a really cool thing. So, really encouraging your people, continuing to grow, growing that network, and celebrating your victories, but also realizing that it's just a stepping stone to greater things coming up into the future,
Yeah.
right? And so I've been very fortunate to have a communications director and a communications and community engagement chief who are fully on board with these ideals, who are like, hey, um, unless you give us a reason not to trust you, like if you're doing good work and you're bringing in these folks, have at it. So I think slashing the red tape is a big deal too,
Yeah.
because people probably know in an academic setting, there's a lot of rules and restrictions and a lot and they're there for a reason. I'm
Right.
not saying they're not. But in some instances, it may be helpful to slash some of that red tape and help with those efficiencies. I always like to say I've got like three different groups of people at our schools when I contact our schools or I go out to our schools. uh Three different kind of reactions when they see me, right? You have the one group who's like, "Oh, hey, Shane's here. Yeah, hey, come on in, see some of this cool stuff we're doing, like da da da." That's like one group. Then you have kind of the yeah, yeah, Shane, how's it? A little more professional, toned down, but they're fine with me being there. Yeah, we're fine with you being there. And then you have the people who are like, just let me run my school. I don't need to be doing all this PR marketing stuff. We just want to kind of lay low and run our school. And so what I've seen over the course of time is, uh, you know, these groups over here that are excited to see communications in their schools, that are excited to share their stories, and the people who are just okay with it. Yeah, we'll take part. Those groups are growing, and the groups who are like, we're cool, just doing our own thing, that group is shrinking.
Yeah.
So that's where we want to be. So that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I think it's an amalgamation of all those different things.
Yeah. And you don't have to win everybody over and you don't have to
Yeah.
highlight everything. I mean, you want to do a fair job and you did a great job of kind of explaining how you try to keep some of that balance with 33 schools. But grab the people that are willing to share and you're growing in enrollment. I mean, I think it definitely makes a difference when people are seeing the great things that are happening. They see opportunities at your school and then they come on over. Um, We've got to wrap up here, but you actually did attend a social media for schools retreat, the first ever last June in Stillwater, Minnesota, and we have another one next year. We're opening it up again, June of 2026. Can you just kind of share what that experience was like, and then maybe an invitation if somebody's kind of on the fence of what would maybe convince them, hey, you should really check this out.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is that it's so much more than a school social media conference. You have a lot of different people who wore a lot of different hats. We had a few superintendents there, right?
Mhm.
We had people who were high up on the chain. We had some people who were very new to school PR. We had some people who had been around in school PR for many years. So when you get that large kind of uh, variance in people in one room, and they're actually able to have time to sit down and talk with each other and exchange ideas and things that are working, or what's your experience with this system, or I'm having trouble with this. It can make a huge difference, especially because being in kind of that smaller setting, that limited number of people, I'm sure a lot of people listening maybe have been to the national or state conferences where, you're running around your different things. You might see the same person in two of your different sessions, and you're getting great stuff. The national conferences are amazing. I love going to them. But the thing I loved about social media for schools is the ability to slow down, the ability to be in one place with like-minded people who are coming from a lot of different places and actually share some food, share a conversation, hang out, be be there sitting next to the same people through a couple of sessions in one day, and between the sessions turn into them and saying, "Hey, this was kind of interesting when they were talking about this. Have you ever done this at your school?" Was really something that um, it's difficult to find in other conferences, and I think is really super valuable. And I think the ability to we talk about networking, it's kind of been sabotaged by like professionalese, but the ability to create those relationships on the spot is really an amazing thing because everybody who's there has a passion for telling stories and for helping their cities children out and school staff out. And when you get people with a shared mission in a room together who are all earnest and passionate, great things happen.
Hmm.
So I loved those aspects of it. In addition to the amazing speakers who were giving you big picture ideas and also actionable things that you can start doing the day you get back to your school district, right? Because sometimes you get like big picture inspirational things, and it's like, well, that made me want to run through a wall, but now I'm back at my school district. I kind of don't know what to do with that. Making it a specific focus of here's exactly what you can do now to bring these plans into action was really great. I'm planning on coming back again. Thank you so much for hosting it.
Yeah.
Um, Also, the venue, the area is just beautiful right there on the river. The pedestrian bridge. The pedestrian bridge was right outside of my hotel,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I was able to the Water Street Inn. I kind of just sat on my balcony reading at night, watching the pedestrian bridge go up and down. Was super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'll be getting out to all the attendees for some of those small gold mine sessions. Sheen, I think just you sharing all the different aspects of your bond would make a really good break, like little gold mine session. So, will you consider applying for that?
I would be happy to. It would be
Yeah.
my honor.
Yeah, I think that would really be helpful because all schools go through that, and obviously you've got a huge success story. So, as we wrap up, what would you say? You've given us a ton of tips, but if you were to say what's your best social media tip, what would it be?
Don't get married to the numbers. Don't get married to all different trends and everything. It's great to dig into trending material, but just focus on just telling the story. Not everything needs to be slick. Not everything needs to be super polished. If you're telling a great story about great kids doing great things, the people will come.
That's like a mic drop, Shane. I love that. That is very inspirational. Sometimes we get a lot of pressure and it's just share those stories. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, Shane, maybe to ask a few more questions or just get connected, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, best way, email me and then I'll email you back and that'll have all my phone information and everything. But SBERGAN at kcpublicschools.org. And if you can't remember that, communications at kcpublicschools.org, communications at kcpublicschools.org, and reach out. I would love to share any tips back and forth. If anybody has some interesting things that have worked for you that you think might work for us at KC Public Schools, if you're working on a bond and you're having trouble kind of breaking through that bubble of the public, I'd love to help out any way I can if I can. Anybody is free to reach out to me anytime.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll include your email in the show notes as well. Thanks for joining us. And Sheen, I can't believe you've only been in school PR just a little over 2 years. Obviously, this is a team effort. You've got other folks on with you as well, but just your understanding and your encouragement and advice today, it's been so solid. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor, Andrea. Thank you for everything you do, and I appreciate it so much. It's been great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, everybody will be back next week with another great guest. If you are going to the polls this year, good luck. This advice is probably too late for this time around, but next time around, you can re-listen to this and definitely reach out to Shane. We love it when people make connections after meeting them on this podcast. So until next time, guys, keep telling those stories. Bye-bye.